I have died 29 times, and every single time I find him again. I don't remember the dying. I never do. I just wake up somewhere cold with no name, no memory, no explanation for anything, except one thing: a drawing in my pocket. A face I don't recognize. A face I've been drawing for 200 years without knowing whose it is. This cycle, I woke up in a frost-covered field at the edge of a wolf pack's territory with 3 months of borrowed life already behind me and 4 years left before the next death. 4 years. And he is right there, standing at the end of a corridor with amber eyes that are older than anything alive has any right to be, looking at me like he has been looking for me for a very long time. He has 200 years. I don't know that yet, but the drawing in my pocket does. The soul remembers what the mind forgets, and right now, mine is remembering everything. 3 months earlier. I didn't know any of this.
Chapter 1. The War That Never Ended. There was a war, not a human war, something older and bloodier and more final than anything human history had ever produced. Vampires and werewolves. 200 years of shared territory turned into 40 years of shared slaughter. Packs burned, courts fell. The borderlands between their territories became a graveyard that neither side had enough living members left to properly mourn. Nobody remembered who started it. Nobody remembered the original wound. By the time it had been running 40 years, it had become simply what was. The way some wars do. They forget their beginning and become their own reason for continuing. And then she appeared. Nobody knew where she came from. She walked out of the tree line between the two armies on a November night, with the smoke of 3 burning packs behind her, and she stood at the center of the battlefield, and she was nothing. Not a wolf, not a vampire, not anything either side had a designation for. Something older. Something both bloodlines had myths about, but had stopped believing in. A wandering soul. The first supernatural creature. The thing that existed before the split. A soul so ancient and so powerful that no single body could contain it permanently. It burned through vessels every 7 years. Died. Woke somewhere new. Started over. Always. Without memory. Without continuity. Without anything carried forward except the soul itself. She stood at the center of the battlefield, and she made a bargain. Now with the force that governed supernatural law, the thing both bloodlines called by different names and feared equally, she said, I give up my permanence. I give up my continuity. I give up the right to remember. In exchange, the bloodlines stop killing each other. The force accepted. The war ended. That night. And at the edge of the smoke, standing in the specific stunned silence of a newly turned vampire who had been brought to a battlefield he had not chosen, a young man watched her die for the first time. He was 23 years old. He would always be 23 years old. He did not know her name. He had never spoken to her. But in the last second, in the moment before the first cycle began, she looked across the smoke directly at him and smiled, like a thank you, in advance, for something he had not yet done. He has been doing it ever since. He found her in the second cycle, 8 months of searching. Different body, different name, different face. Same laugh, same specific way of tilting her head when she was thinking. Same dream every night about a battlefield she had never been to. He found her. She didn't know him. She found him anyway. That is how it works. Every cycle, she forgets. He waits. She finds him. Always. 28 cycles. 28 deaths. 28 new beginnings in 28 different bodies with 28 different names, and one vampire, forever 23, who kept every drawing she ever made of his face, without asking her to, without telling her why, just kept them because she made them, and because some things deserve to be kept. Now there are 29, and he is in Crimson Pack territory, and she is 3 months into a life she does not remember choosing, and the 30th drawing is already in her pocket. She just doesn't know whose face it is yet.
Chapter 2. The Girl Who Forgot. She opened her eyes to frost, gray sky, bare winter trees, the specific cold of a November morning pressing against her cheek from the ground beneath her. She sat up. She looked at her hands. She did not know whose hands they were. She did not know her name. She did not know where she was. She did not know how she had come to be lying in a frost-covered field at the edge of Wolfpack territory with nothing on her person except a drawing. Single piece of paper, folded 4 times, tucked into the inside pocket of her coat like someone had placed it there deliberately. She unfolded it. A face. Dark hair, young, or appearing young. Eyes she couldn't determine the color of from pencil marks alone, but that somehow conveyed recognition. Something in her chest pulled toward the drawing the way a compass needle pulled toward north. She did not know why. She folded it, put it back. A pack patrol found her 20 minutes later, the Crimson Pack, one of the oldest wolf packs in the territory, 300 wolves. A young alpha named Aldrich who had been leading for 8 years and had learned to manage complexity the way all good alphas learned, by staying calmer than the situation required. He was very calm when they brought her in. He was considerably less calm when Elder Mara walked through his office door, looked at the young woman sitting across from him, and went completely still. The way old things went still when they encountered something they had been waiting a very long time for. Mara said, very quietly, "She is here." Aldrich said, "Yes." Mara said, "Which cycle?" Aldrich said, 30th. Mara closed her eyes. 1 moment. She opened them. She looked at the young woman who did not know her name. She said, "We will call you Lyra, until you find your own." What Lyra did not know, sitting in the Alpha's office with a drawing of a stranger's face in her pocket, was that she had been called 29 different names before this one. What she did not know was that she had always chosen names that meant something about light. What she did not know was that this was not coincidence. The soul remembered what the mind forgot, and the soul had always known what it was. 3 months passed. She built a life the way she apparently always built lives, fast, deep, with the specific ease of someone who had been making connections for 200 years, even when the mind had no memory of making them. She worked in the Pack's medical facility. Her hands knew things her mind had not been taught. The healer watched her work for 1 day and said, "You have done this before." She said, "I do not think so." The healer said, "Your hands think so." She had the dream every night. The battlefield, the smoke settling, a woman at the center of it, a woman she knew was herself in the way you knew things in dreams, standing very still while 2 armies went quiet around her, and at the edge of the smoke, barely visible, a young man, watching. She could never see his face clearly in the dream. She drew it every morning anyway. She did not know why. She kept the drawings in the inside pocket of her coat, next to the first one, the one she had woken up with. 3 months in, she had 11 drawings, all the same face, a face she had never seen, a face she would have recognized anywhere. She was about to see it. Chapter 3. The One Who Waited.
He arrived on a Tuesday. Officially, a quarterly alliance meeting between the Ashvale Pack and the nearest vampire court. Unofficially, he had felt the wandering soul activate 3 months ago. He had been in a state of controlled anticipation that his entire court had noticed. He had declined to explain. He had done this 29 times. He knew the protocol. He did not seek her out. He did not position himself in her path. He did not engineer encounters. He waited. She always found him. He was in the main corridor of the Ashvale Council building, mid-conversation with the senior beta, when he heard footsteps. He did not turn. He had learned not to turn. He continued the conversation. He heard the footsteps stop. He heard a sharp intake of breath, small, quickly controlled, the sound of someone encountering something unexpected. And then she said, "I know you." He closed his eyes. 1 second. 29 cycles. She had said it differently every time. Sometimes a question, sometimes a statement. Once, the 14th cycle, she had simply walked up to him in a crowded market and taken his hand, without a word, as if taking his hand was the obvious conclusion to a journey she hadn't known she was making. This time, a statement. Certain. He turned. She was standing 10 feet away. Dark hair, brown eyes with the specific depth of a soul that had been watching the world for 200 years, looking out of a face that had only been watching it for 3 months. She was holding a stack of documents against her chest, like a shield she had forgotten she was holding. She was looking at him like, home. He said, "Yes." He said, "You do." He watched her face do what her face always did in this moment. The specific confusion of a mind encountering knowledge the soul already held. The expression of someone who recognizes without understanding the recognition. He had seen this expression 29 times. It devastated him every single time. 200 years had not made it easier. He suspected nothing would. 3 days of proximity, neither of them engineered, both of them allowed. She asked him on the second day, "Have we met before?" He said, "In a manner of speaking." She said, "That is not an answer." He said, "No, it is not." She said, "Are you going to give me one?" He said, "When you are ready for it." "Yes." She said, "What if I am ready now?" He said, "You are not quite." She said, "How do you know?" He said, "Because you have not asked the right question yet." She looked at him for a long moment. Something moved in her expression. She reached into the inside pocket of her coat. She produced a piece of paper, folded 4 times. She held it out. He looked at it without taking it. He knew what it was. She said, "I woke up with this, 3 months ago, in a field. No name, no memory, no explanation." She said, "Just this." He took it. He unfolded it. He looked at his own face, in pencil, on a piece of paper that was 3 months old. She said, "I have drawn it 11 more times since then." She said, "Every morning." She said, "Without knowing why." She said, "It is your face." He said, "Yes." She said, "I drew your face before I knew whose it was." He said, "Yes." A silence that held everything. She said, "Kale?" He looked up. She said, "That is the right question, isn't it?" He said, "Which question?" She said, "Not how we met, not why I know you." She said, "How many times have I drawn this face before?" He said, 29 drawings exist that I know of. You may have made more that I never found." She stared at him. The forest path was very quiet. The frost on the ground, the bare winter trees, the specific silence of 2 people standing at the edge of something enormous. She said, "Tell me." He sat down on the frost-covered ground without ceremony. She sat beside him, and he told her everything. Chapter 4. The Truth He Kept. She did not know that Aldrich had been watching. He had been watching since the corridor. He had been watching since the first day Cale arrived and went completely still the moment Lyra rounded a corner. He had been watching when they sat on the frost-covered path for 2 hours, and she came back with her eyes bright and her expression showing the specific quality of someone who has received information that restructures everything. He called Elder Mara. He said, "She found him." Mara said, "How long?" He said, 3 days. Mara said, "Faster than last cycle." He said, "Much faster." She said, "It is accelerating." He said, "What does that mean?" Mara said, "It means the 200th year is doing what it was designed to do." She said, "It means the soul is remembering." The pack noticed. Packs noticed everything. 300 wolves in close quarters for generations. Nothing stayed private. They noticed the way Lyra moved differently after the path conversation. They noticed the way Cale's eyes tracked her across any shared space without him appearing to track her. They noticed the way she had started finishing his sentences. Not dramatically, small things. He would begin a thought and she would complete it without knowing she was completing it. The soul remembered, even when the mind did not. Not everyone was comfortable with what they noticed. Bren, senior warrior, 12 years in the Ashvale pack, the specific wariness of someone who had been trained to identify threats and had identified one, found her outside the medical facility that afternoon. He said, "The vampire." She said, "Cale." He said, "You do not know him." She said, "I know him better than you think." He said, "You have known him for 3 days." She said, "In this body, yes." He stared at her. She said, "I know this is confusing." He said, "You are pack adjacent. You are human. You are..." She said, "I am not entirely human." He said, "Lyra." She said, "I am not asking your permission, Bren." She said it without heat, without anger. The specific calm of someone who has recently learned that they are 200 years old and has adjusted their relationship with other people's opinions accordingly. She said, "I am telling you so you understand." She said, "Whatever you think is happening between me and Cale is a fraction of what is actually happening." She said, "I promise you I am safe." He looked at her for a long moment. He said, "He is not human." She said, "Neither am I." She left him standing outside the medical facility. He watched her go. And then he went to find Aldrich. Aldrich called Cale to his office. The two of them, alone. The specific meeting of an alpha managing his territory and a vampire who had been coming to that territory for 3 months under the official pretense of alliance business. Aldrich said, "She knows." Cale said, "Yes." Aldrich said, "You told her." Cale said, "She asked the right question." Aldrich said, "How much?" Cale said, "Everything." Aldrich was quiet for a moment. He said, "The pack is unsettled." Cale said, "I know." He said, "They do not understand what she is." Cale said, "Most people don't." He said, "They see a human woman they have come to care about over 3 months being pulled toward a vampire who arrived 8 days ago." He said, "From where they are standing?" Cale said, "It looks like what it is not." He said, "Yes." Cale looked at him. He said, "Aldrich." He said, "I have been watching her navigate 29 of these." He said, "Every cycle the people around her struggle with the same thing." He said, They care about her. She is easy to care about. She has always been easy to care about. And then they see her move towards something they do not understand, and they try to protect her from it. He said, "She does not need protection from me." He said, "She never has." Aldrich said, "She needs protection from the cycle ending the wrong way." Silence. Cale said, "What do you know about the cycle ending?" Aldrich said, "Mara told me. About the 200th year, about the clause, about the choice." Cale went very still. He said, "What clause?" And that was the moment everything changed. Chapter 5. The Choice. He did not know. 200 years, 29 cycles. He had been waiting without knowing what he was waiting for. He had thought he was waiting for her to come back each cycle. He had thought that was enough. He had made peace 29 times with the specific grief of 7 years and then losing her. He had made peace with it the way you made peace with something you could not change. He had never considered, not once, that the cycling might end, that she might be able to stay. Mara found them both that evening. She told them the clause. She told them the condition. She told them about the 200th year. She told them about the choice, about permanence claimed back, about both bloodlines witnessing, about the vampire who watched the original bargain, Cale, needing to be present. She told them everything, and when she was done, she left. Lyra and Cale stood in the darkening forest, neither of them speaking. She said, "You did not know." He said, "No." She said, 200 years of watching me die, and you did not know I could stay?" He said, "No." She said, "How does that feel?" He looked at her. He said, "Like I have been standing in a room for 200 years, not knowing there was a door." She breathed. She said, "I have 4 years left in this cycle." He said, "Yes." She said, "And then the clock resets." He said, "Unless." She said, "Unless I choose permanence." He said, "Yes." She said, "This body, this life, this 3 months of memory I have built from nothing." He said, "Yes." She said, "And I do not get the 200 years back." He said, "No." She said, "I get now." He said, "That is all." She said, "Is that enough?" He did not answer because it was not his answer to give. She said, "Cale." He said, "Yes." She said, "I need you to understand something." He said, "Tell me." She said, "I am not afraid of the choice." He said, "You should take time." She said, "I have been taking time." She said, "I have been taking 7 years at a time for 200 years." She said, "I am done taking time." He looked at her. She said, "Show me the drawings." He produced the leather case, worn soft with 200 years of handling. He opened it. 29 drawings, different paper, different medium, different hands, all the same face. His face. She went through them slowly, every single one. The modern ones on clean white paper, the older ones on parchment, the oldest, fragile, yellowed, drawn in ash on pale birch bark, 200 years ago, before the first cycle, before she knew him. She held the oldest drawing. She said, "I drew this before I met you." He said, "A few weeks before the first cycle ended." She said, "I drew your face before you existed to me." He said, "The soul knew." She said, "The soul chose you before the mind understood what choosing was." He said, "Yes." She looked at the drawing. She looked at him. She said, "The smile." He said, "What smile?" She said, "On the battlefield, before the first cycle, I smiled at you." He said, "Yes." She said, "I know why." He said, "Tell me." She said, "The soul knew you would be the one waiting." She said, "The soul knew it was going to need someone to find it every time." She said, "The smile was, thank you, in advance, for 200 years of finding me." Something moved through his expression. 200 years of waiting, arriving, at the one thing it had been moving toward. She folded the oldest drawing carefully. She put it back in the case. She closed it. She held it out to him. He said, "Those are yours." She said, "Keep them." He said, "Why?" She said, "Because I am going to make a 30th. She said, "And I want you to put it with the others." He said, "The 30th will be different." She said, "Yes." He said, "You will know whose face it is when you make it." She said, "Yes." She said, "That is the difference." She said, "That is the whole difference." She looked at him one last time, at the man who had watched her die 29 times and had never once stopped waiting, at the man the soul had chosen before the mind understood what choosing was, at the man she was going to remember tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. She said, "I choose permanence, not for a war, not for a bloodline, for myself, for the life I want to live, and the person I want to live it with."
Chapter 6. The 30th time. I remember the exact moment I stopped being afraid of forgetting. It was not the claiming. It was not standing in the crimson forest with Aldrich and Mara and Elder Voss witnessing. It was not the specific settling of the 7-year clock, the background hum of impermanence going quiet, the specific silence louder than the sound had ever been. It was smaller than all of that. It was the moment I looked at 29 drawings of his face and understood that my hands had been trying to remember him for 200 years. That every cycle I had woken up with nothing, no name, no memory, no explanation for anything, and my hands had picked up whatever was available: pencil, charcoal, ink, ash on birch bark, and drawn the same face, his face, always his face, without knowing whose it was. The soul trying to reach through the forgetting, trying to leave itself a note. This is the one. Find this one. This is the face. The claiming was simple, the way the original bargain had been simple. I stood at the edge of the crimson forest at dusk with both bloodlines witnessing, Aldrich for the wolves, Elder Voss for the vampires. Mara because she had been waiting 90 years for this moment and I was not going to make her miss it. And Cale, standing slightly apart from the others, the way he had always stood slightly apart. Watching, waiting. I said, "I gave up permanence for the peace of 2 bloodlines. That debt is paid. I claim permanence back. Not for a war, not for a bloodline, for myself. I choose to stay. I choose this life. I choose him." The supernatural law received it. Something settled. In the air. In the soul. In the specific quality of the dusk around us. I did not blaze. I did not transform. I did not become anything visibly different. I simply stayed. The 7-year clock stopped. The cycling ended. And for the first time in 200 years, I had no countdown. I turned to find him watching me, the way he always watched me. I said, "It is done." He said, "Yes." I said, "I can feel it, the difference." He said, "Like something let go." I said, "Yes." I said, "How do you know?" He said, "I have watched you let go of each cycle, 29 times, and every time your face does something in the moment before the next one starts that I have spent 200 years trying to describe." I said, "What does it look like?" He said, "Like relief and grief simultaneously." He said, "Like you are sad about something you are also glad to be free of." I said, "I think that is what living feels like when you know it ends." He said, "Yes." He said, "You are about to find out what it feels like when it doesn't." I looked at him, at the amber eyes that were older than anything alive had any right to be, at the face that had been 23 since before my grandmother's grandmother was born, at the man who had kept 29 drawings of his own face for 200 years because I had made them, because some things deserved to be kept. I said, "Tell me everything." He said, "Everything?" I said, "Start with the first one." He said, "The battlefield, the smoke, you standing at the center of it." He said, "You looked at me before the first cycle." He said, "You smiled." I said, "I know why now." He said, "Tell me." I said, "The soul knew you would be the one waiting." I said, "The smile was thank you." I said, "In advance." I said, "For 200 years of finding me." He looked at me with those amber eyes, and something moved through them. 200 years arriving at the one thing they had been moving toward. I said, "Kale." He said, "Yes." I said, "I am going to find you every morning from now on." He said, "Yes." I said, "That is not going to get old for you." He said, "It has not gotten old in 200 years." He began to tell me everything, all of it, 200 years, 30 versions of the same laugh, 30 versions of the same way of tilting my head when I was thinking, 29 drawings that were all the same drawing, and the crimson forest was quiet around us, and the dusk settled into dark, and the pack bond hummed its warm collective hum in the trees. And I sat beside the man my soul had been choosing since before I understood what choosing was, and I listened. For the first time in 200 years, I was not going to forget what I heard. I have died 29 times. I have woken up 29 times, with no name and no memory, and a drawing of his face in my pocket. I have found him 29 times without knowing why. I have said goodbye 29 times without knowing I was saying it. And on the 30th time, I stayed. Not for a war, not for a bloodline, not because the soul chose, because I chose. Because love is not stored in the mind. It is stored somewhere the forgetting cannot reach. And 200 years of forgetting could not touch it. Not once, not even close. The soul remembers what the mind forgets. And love, it turns out, is older than both.
Every 7 years, she forgot him. Every 7 years, she found him again. For 200 years, he waited. For 200 years, she came back. And on the 30th cycle, she finally stayed. Subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to believe that love survives the forgetting, because it does. The soul knows, even when the mind does not. It always has. It always will.